Hi, good evening. Welcome to the first of the two October meetings of the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission. It is 6:53 on October 2nd, October 3rd, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And before proceeding, let me just read off that pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville Historic Preservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of the agenda. And also I'll insert a comment. This is our first meeting using Zoom, so bear with us, members of the public who happen to be watching. We're still figuring some things out. We've changed platforms. Also let's do our introductions. As we customarily do. I'll start off with my screen, Mr. Chagnon.
I'm DJ Shagnon. I'm a landscape architect and a resident of Ward 5.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kelly.
Hi, I'm Robin Kelly. I am the Realtor representative on the commission, and I'm also a historic homeowner in Union Square.
And Mr. Falvey.
Hi there, I'm Ryan Falvey. I am a resident of Ward 2.
And Mr. Coughlin.
I am Dan Coughlin, and I'm a resident of a historic building in Union Square.
Thank you, and I screwed up your name. Apologies. Coughlin.
Not a problem.
It'll take me a few meetings. Ms. Price.
Good evening. My name is Denise Price, and I am a homeowner in a local historic district.
Thanks. And then I'm Eric Parks, Chair and Architect, Historic Homeowner of Ward 3. And that's it. And then staff, if you'd like to let us to identify yourselves, who we have tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. My name is Sarah White. I'm a senior planner in the Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division with the city. I just like to ask everyone for their patience. It's going to take a little bit longer to get everybody to raise their hand and unmute them and things like that. This is the first meeting using this new platform, so we're all kind of adjusting to it a little bit. And Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd like to note that two of my colleagues are here. Emily Hutchings is a senior planner in the Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division. She's going to be assisting particularly with the time clock and whatnot tonight. And Roberta Cameron is our Community Preservation Act manager. She and I work very closely together on projects that that are asking for historic preservation funds from the CPA. So she's here in the event you have any questions as well.
Okay, thanks. So the menu for tonight, we have a couple of CPA advisory reviews. We have a memorandum of agreement. We have public hearings for an alteration and a demolition determination of significance. So we'll first start off with the CPA advisory reviews. Let's see, we have two. The first is 1 Westwood Road, which is the Somerville Museum.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, through you. We have a representative from the Somerville Museum here this evening. I provided you with a list of what they're looking to seek money for and what you need to determine as historically significant for CPA, historic preservation funding purposes, and the other items which just need your just general guidance or advice if you have any, because the assets themselves are considered historically significant as it is. Not to put her on the spot, but I also have Roberta Cameron. Roberta, did you want to say anything about this before we give Barbara like 5 minutes?
No, we can hear from Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So Barbara, I am going to allow you to speak, and if you could unmute yourself, that would be terrific. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just unmuted.
Fabulous. Okay. Everything, every small thing is just a winning joy right now.
Okay.
Barbara, if you could take no more than 5 minutes and go through what each of the items is that you're asking for
Sure.
a review about, that would be great.
Can you all see me, or you can just hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so what we're looking at this year is the Stone family suite of furniture. The stone, we believe it's from about 1894. It was from a very, very large elm that dated from what we believe is the 1700s in Somerville. It was Frederick Stone, who was also the president of Somerville National Bank that was in Union Square, owned the property, and I think it's through marriage. He had got it from the Rand, widow Rand and her farm. And so it has a lot of associations that people are pretty well aware of if you're aware of, some of the local history. And the thing about it was that this tree was very well beloved. And when it was cut down, he had this suite of furniture made. And it's a very fine suite. It includes a table, 4 leaves, 7 are 2 armchairs, 5 chairs. I'm sure there was a 6 at one point, but we don't have it. And then also a china cabinet and a buffet or a credenza. So we're seeking funds to get those restored. They'll be on permanent view up in the conference room of the museum, which we're redesigning right now as a library. So that will be open to the public. And then we also are looking at wrought iron, which has been already determined historic. So maybe I don't really need to spend any time on it, but it's the Loring wrought iron and getting it restored. It's on Central Street and it abuts the doors there, just so you know. And then there's 3 paintings. So 2 paintings are of Sarah Ann Adams Magoon. I know you know the Magoon house, and she apparently was born there and lived there all her life. Her husband was John Calvin Magoon. They had a big farm and many children and descendants. The museum owns quite a bit of material handed down from them. And anyway, so we've got their portraits from 1840, and they're by an itinerant artist of some significance called Weatherby. So we're very excited to have those conserved. And they have their frames with them, so we would also get their frames conserved. They're not in bad shape, but the bottoms of them have deteriorated because they've been unfortunately sitting on the floor and things like that. There's also a painting of Mayor Edward Glines. We were looking at this like 2 years ago, I think, in order to get it conserved because it was detaching from its stretcher and had other problems of lifting paint. And it was off-site, and so it's only just come back, and now we are including it here to be conserved. Again, these would be conserved by Gianfranco Pocobeni, who's the conservator at the Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum and also at the Fogg Art Museum for many years. And then I should have mentioned Melissa Carr would be doing the conservation of the Stone family furniture, and she's very well qualified too. The other thing is the archives, and this is a project that came about as we were doing the processing right now of all the collections coming back from offsite storage. And we are having to separate out what are collections from what are archives. And we found we have a lot of archives. And the archives, there was a project in the 1990s to organize the archives. And I'd actually tried to have someone come from the roving archivist plant program. It's a Massachusetts program from the state archives. But that did not go through. And so as we've been seeing the great work of this company that we're dealing with called Museum and Collector Resources, it came to us to go ahead and do an archives project next year. And I think it will really be a great benefit to the people of Somerville. They'll have better access to those archives as a result. And the archives date from the 1700s. We have pieces in there. In fact, we're always finding more because, of course, we don't quite know what we have right now, but we did come across a newspaper from 1791, I believe, and it was George Washington's funeral, a review of his funeral. We also came across another newspaper that was the day that the Titanic sank. Any other questions? I think that's it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could through you, Barbara, I believe there were some frames as well. Did you talk about just the frames or the portraits? know
Oh,
you
so I
talked about
mentioned
portraits.
that the two portraits we have of Sarah and John Magoon, they're in their frames.
Mhm.
And the frames, they were damaged because they were sitting on the floor for, many years because we didn't have proper
Right.
storage for them. So the bottoms, and that is included in Gianfranco Pocobene's estimate for work.
Okay.
The
does
other
it-
one, the Glines portrait does not
Yeah.
have a frame, and we're gonna,
Right.
the mayor's portrait does not have a frame right now. It's probable that we do have it, and we just don't know where it is right now.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that we'll be able to find it.
Okay. No, thank you for that, because separated out in what you had submitted were 3 gilt frames and then a separate line item were the portraits. So that's what we had
Oh,
given
I
to.
see.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I
But I
at one
didn't
point,
see,
I thought we had the Edward Glines frame, but we didn't.
okay, because I didn't
don't.
see any gilt frames in
But the two,
this
Sarah, and if you look at the Sarah Ann Adams Magoon portrait and John, her husband, you'll see they're in gilt frames.
They are, okay, because
Yeah.
the frame didn't come through for hers. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. But no, they're in gilt frames.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Unmute myself. Okay, this is not a public hearing, this is just for review and advisement. So I don't have any particular questions about this. They all seem, so we are not really talking about the railings, since that's already been determined historically
Right.
significant, but the rest of this we are, do we need to take any action tonight on those?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the railings, they are already historically significant because they're part of a building which is an LHD. So what you need to do, below the listing of each of the items that I sent to you, there's a role for the HPC. And so your role on this one is to provide any guidance or advice on their restoration, if you have any. You need to determine whether or not the portraits and their frames should be considered historically significant for CPA, historic preservation funding purposes. And regarding the photo,
I was just, the archives include photographs, but they also extend further their letters and other kinds
Right.
of materials.
So, thank you, Barbara, for that. In what we received, you'll see some images of the archives and the photos. And you need to determine whether or not those are historically significant for CPA, historic preservation funding purposes. I know that, Roberta wants to add something in on that, but, I think, we don't know exactly what the specific items are selected from those archives for conservation. And the determination of historically significant for CPA HP funding purposes can't be to assess what's there. So we need to know what is there already in order and then make a determination on whether
So,
those particular items are.
If I could just talk for 1 minute about that. I'm happy to do
Really
that.
quickly, Barbara? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so the archives are not for conserving any particular piece in there, and the image that I had sent was sent to you by mistake. It was really an image that was for condition, to show the condition of the archives. It was not to ask permission for those archives to be conserved. The archives project is very similar to the collection project that we have right now, which is processing the collections. And so it's rehousing them as they come back. So these are the same thing. They're being rehoused in acid-free folders, things like that. Photos will be taken as necessary to identify them. That information will be added to Past Perfect. But it's really, this is a preservation of the archives, and it's very general. It's not very, if we have any particular piece that needs conservation, we'll either see whether or not we can handle it, or it'll be set aside for a future, either grant request or something like that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, but I think Ms. Cameron might have some items to add as the CPA manager, yes?
No, actually, I think you covered it. I just wanted to clarify the role.
Thanks.
So if I could ask another follow-up question then, Mr. Chair. Ms. Cameron, regarding the archive then, how is that to be looked at by the commission? Because this isn't what I understood the project to be.
Yeah, so I believe that last year, the collections as a whole were determined to be historically significant. And so I think that the archive would be considered to be a part of the collection as a whole.
Okay, very good. Good. So then the commission could just provide
The eligibility, I think,
guidance.
is determined. Yes,
Very
guidance.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Terrific. So guidance then on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not really qualified to offer guidance on how to archive documents very much, but as a whole, that project sounds like it's worthwhile. Certainly, it's contributing to the protection of what is historically significant within the collection there. So in that sense, I think it's fine. Anyone in the commission have any thoughts or questions?
I do.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Jessica.
The report would have been really helpful to be more detailed. So for example, the information on the archives, more specificity as to what was being requested, and having the information that it is considered part of the collection, which has already been determined historic. So that would just be helpful information to move us along. But the other pieces just seem, unfortunately, very brief. And it would have be nice, for example, in the information that we received in writing, to understand that the suite of furniture was crafted from wood taken from this historic beloved tree. That doesn't appear in any of the information that we were provided. And so that's important context, of course, for us to understand. So that would have been very helpful. We also don't have the specific number of pieces in terms of the number of chairs and things like that. So, when we're presented with that information, it would be very helpful to have any of that background information rather than simply being presented here, giving that to us in the report itself. So
if I could, Mr. Chairman, through you and Madam Vice Chair, so that I could answer to that. So the information about the tree was provided by the museum. However, that was not provided in our description that was sent to you, because it was also, the museum stated that they were hoping that through this project, they would hope to be able to verify whether or not that fact is true. So that is why I did not include it.
I see.
And then as far as the chairs go, I think that there's a number of chairs. It might have just said chairs, but I don't believe that I had the number of chairs presented as well. But as far as like the china cabinet and the dining table with 4 leaves, etc., as well as the chairs, yeah, that is in the report. Unfortunately, so the information that I have at the time is what I can pass along.
Understood. Yeah. Just as there was confusion about
no problem
the portraits and the frames, I think the
yes
information coming from the museum,
yes,
having greater clarity would be very helpful.
Yes.
Similarly with the information around the archives, just being
correct.
more clear and providing us with the pertinent details would be very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Yeah, Barbara, that just a note of that. There was quite a bit of confusion on the part of staff, and not just me. So maybe like next year, for whatever ask you have next year, we can suss through it in a more ahead of time.
Yeah,
so that
absolutely.
everybody is aware. Because if I'm just, getting those, the photos and whatnot that I have, I'm like, okay, well, I'll pass them along. But if they were set in error or something like that, then it does make for a more confusing time for the board.
Right. So if I could just respond that I hadn't, all of this, of course, was included in the application. And for some reason, I thought that the application would be sent to you. And I realize now that that is not true. So all of this information was in there as historic resources. But yeah, and I'm really sorry that you didn't get it because it's really fascinating information. And I'd be happy to give it to you, you know, after the fact now, just so you have it.
Thank you.
So in relation to the actual guidance we're supposed to be giving, if I could ask, the restoration of the wrought iron railings, is there a proposed method? I mean, I guess really what I'm asking is, do you have a plan in place for, I mean, I know you know what you're doing, Barbara.
No, no, it's okay, DJ.
But in terms of the coatings and everything else.
Yeah, yeah. So again, this is in the application because, you know,
Yep.
I really didn't send you all the condition and the treatment proposal.
Sure.
I didn't realize that you would want to see that, but that's being done by Cassidy Brothers,
Okay.
and they're very highly qualified in terms of doing historic wrought iron.
Are they, but in terms of the finished coating, because obviously there's a lot of deterioration of the paint.
Yeah.
I assume it's going to be, you know, wire brush to get it to bare white metal where there's rust, but
Well,
then, or similar.
right, exactly. They're actually, you know, with wrought iron, you want to completely take it apart. It's all mechanically put together.
Right.
And so
Right.
it will be completely taken apart and individual elements will be conserved and restored. And then all of that's going to be primed and painted and
Okay.
then put back together.
That was the phrasing I wanted to be sure was in there.
Yeah. No,
Every now
no
and then
problem.
somebody thinks about, you know, trying to powder coat it because it'll last longer, and you don't
No.
want to do that with old wrought
No,
iron.
it's gonna
Okay.
actually go down to metal. I
Yeah.
have to be very careful that it doesn't go down to metal too much. You
Yeah.
know, like I don't want to be removing
Mhm.
you know, information there. So that's why I go and stand with Cassidy Brothers and make sure they're not doing too much.
Terrific.
We do
Yeah.
go down to metal if we can.
Yeah. And then you know, a zinc rich primer or something over it to
Absolutely.
back out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and they do it all. They've got a wonderful facility up in Raleigh that has relative
Mhm.
humidity control. So it's all vented relative humidity control. And also they'll be assuming that it's lead paint. We'll check and make sure, but
It probably is.
you got to get rid of the lead paint too. So
Yeah.
it's a big process.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of a historic fence restoration that we did in the south end, and it was that same sort of process, and we just had to
Oh,
be
yeah.
careful. So
Yeah.
Yep. That is exactly the sort of treatment I would have recommended, which I'm not surprised to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Chair Park said, I'm not qualified to talk about what the right way to conserve the archives is, but
Well, again, that's going to be
Yeah.
the museum and collector resources people.
exactly.
And
Yep.
they're just doing a fantastic job with the collection. So that was one of the reasons, you know, since we had been working with them and the archives came up and we were trying to figure out what to do with them. And it was just so great to have them, you know, continue and work on that next year.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments?
And I guess, are we required then to take a vote to determine whether things are significant for the furniture, the paintings and the frames?
I could through you. I'm going to defer to Ms. Karen on that one simply because if the collection was determined to be historically significant, I would assume that that would then encompass these items, including the pictures, the frames, etc., the furniture.
Thank you for the question. I would suggest that the archives would be considered to be part of the collections, but if we're pulling out individual items such as the furniture or paintings for a unique treatment that's separate from the whole collections, that it would make sense to make a determination of those individual pieces of artwork.
Okay. Thank you. So Well, is there any other discussion about these? I guess the overall, the historic significance of these other items first, and then if anybody has any comments about or thoughts on how they ought to be preserved or restored.
I'll jump in. I mean, my sense is that of the paintings, all three of them are of they're paintings of people notably associated with the city's history. They seem like clear candidates to me for historic significance, especially given the connection to a Somerville painter as well. And the frames, that are original to them would go with them. To me, that all seems pretty cut and dried. The furniture, knowing the history of the family it belonged to, it seems like a piece of Somerville history, especially if it turns out that it was a local tree instead of just wood from somewhere. But yeah, and it's less cut and dried to me, but it still seems like a good candidate for this from my end.
So, thank you. Are we still waiting? What will happen? When will we confirm the origin of the wood in the table, or is that still being fleshed out?
So Melissa Carr is the furniture conservator who's going to be working on this. And she has already ascertained that it is all made from one single piece of wood. All of the veneer on all of the pieces, the buffet, the china cabinet, everything. It's all the chairs, the frames of the chairs. And we've come across, a reference to the chairs and the other materials when it was given to the museum that references the dark wood. There's a veneer inlay and it's darker than the other, and that was the root of the tree.
Okay.
So the whole thing appears to be certainly true that it's one tree. And then, the elm, actually there was a show at the museum. I never saw it. It was before my time, but it was called In Pleasant Company. And it was about the Stone family in Somerville. And they actually had this information about and actually the furniture was shown there. And they were the ones who said it was the elm, and they had a picture. It's an engraving that we have of the elm on the property. So it's a great story.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing, is that for us, we try to involve people in the history of Somerville through what we consider windows. So if you have this kind of hook or story, it's a great way to bring people in.
Okay. Well, to me, these all in their own ways have historic significance for Somerville. I mean, the paintings and obviously the wrought iron has already been established that way. And furniture, I would agree with DJ. It's less blatantly significant in the sense that it's not like a picture of a famous person, but its story is very local. And it, given the loss of the elms, and that was sort of a blow to the psyche at the time, that I think it's kind of a cool thing. So,
well, it is associated with a very important family in Somerville, the Stone family. We have the Stone Avenue named after them.
All right. Okay.
So I would propose that unless anyone has other comments to make on the furniture or the paintings, that we proceed with a vote on their historic significance. So I would move that we vote to find the suite of furniture from the Stone family historically significant for the purposes of CPC funding or CPA funding.
I'll second that. Is the plan then to vote on the two items separately? Or I guess possibly even the three, if we want to consider the paintings separately from the frames?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion that pertaining to just the what, I'm sorry, Robin, what was which item?
The suite of furniture
furniture
associated with the Stone family.
Yep. Okay, all in favor of the Vice Chair Kelly's motion?
I,
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And we'll do the roll call of, let's see, Zoom arranges people differently now. If I miss somebody, please jump in. Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon. Wait, did I already?
You already covered me.
Yeah, the Zoom pushed I just go across with the little pictures and it rearranges people as they speak. And then I vote yes.
and I also vote yes.
Oh, you voiced yes, Vice Chair Kelly.
Yep.
Yeah, see,
Oh.
now you're way off. I need a new system here.
Chair Parks, under your, in the upper right, there should be something that says view.
Oh, change it
You
to
click
gallery.
on that, you can change
Yeah.
it to gallery view,
Okay,
and we should stop moving around on you.
yeah, I should have thought of that. Okay, thank you. Okay, then let's have a motion for the next item.
So I move that we vote to find the three portraits presented as historically significant.
For CPA historic
CPA,
preservation funding
yes.
purposes.
Yes,
Okay,
as she said.
I'll
I second that.
Okay, you can have it, Mr. Coughlin.
okay. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll do the roll call. Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay, so the next motion.
I move that we vote to find the frames associated with the now deemed historically significant portraits, that we find them historically significant for the purposes of restoration through CPC funding.
I'll second that one.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Do the roll call. Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. I think that's it because the railings are already designated.
And the archives.
Oh, we haven't. Okay, right. Let's have a motion for the archives.
Well, so,
Well-
but the archives as part of the collection are already understood to be historically significant, so we
okay, so-
don't need to vote on that. Apparently,
Okay,
Correct.
Ms. White is nodding her head. Yes.
Correct.
yes. If you all are comfortable with it, if Roberta and Sarah, yeah. Okay, then that concludes, I think, our business for 1 Westwood Road.
No, I would just like to say thank you to you all.
Oh,
You.
thank you for all your work, Barbara.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Barbara.
Bye.
Our next CPA advisory review is 404 Broadway, which is the Vita Real Church.
Mr. Chairman, through you, our CPA manager, Roberta Cameron, is here to speak about this project as there was a conflict for the representative of the CPA project.
Okay,
Thank you. So 404 Broadway is, as you mentioned, Vita Real is the current property owner. It was formerly the the Winter Hill Congregational Church. And they had previously applied for CPA funding for a tower restoration project. And as a condition of the funding for the tower restoration project, which they were granted, they placed the building under a preservation restriction, which has been filed at the registry. So this building is already considered to be historically significant. There's no question of that. So the application that they've submitted for this funding round is to retain a historic preservation architect to prepare a condition assessment that will enable them to plan for future improvement of the building. And hopefully the architect who they work with will be able to walk them through prioritizing what are the most important repairs that they can make to restore the building, and perhaps to also help them identify future sources of funding in addition to CPA that they might be able to seek to carry out their restoration. So this is just an advisory review to ask if you have advice that you can provide to the applicants to help them in planning the scope of the project that they're applying for CPA funds for.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could as well, Roberta, I don't know if you said this, I know you mentioned the preservation restriction, but they are also part of a local historic district as well. They're part of the Upper Central Street Local Historic District. It had been individually listed, and then it was brought in to that larger district that we created a couple of years ago.
Okay. Thank you, folks. So it's pretty straightforward, just hiring a preservation architect give them a strategy, a plan for how they can keep up with their building, which can only be a good thing. I don't really know that I have any advice about how that ought to be carried out. Anybody else?
Pick a good one.
Yeah, pick a good one. Yeah.
Does staff have any recommendations or advice that commission would be wise to provide?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Mr. Chairman, through you. You know, doing these conditions assessments, as Ms. Cameron was speaking about, I mean, this is really the first step to really figuring out what the best treatment is for the entire building, right? And so just really focus on, I would say that as the conditions assessment is being done, that a priority list should be created at the end of the areas of the building that need to be addressed first, either for structural reasons, water filtration reasons, et cetera, because that will help inform when the applicant comes back and, you know, if they seek additional Community Preservation Act funds to do a lot of this work. So I find that a priority list that is an additional outgrowth of a conditions assessment is very helpful. Ms. Cameron, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Thank you, that's helpful. I don't have any more to add.
Yeah, if anything else, I think go forward with it.
Right. Well, thank you very much. This is a required part of the application process for the applicant to seek an advisory review with the Historic Preservation Commission. With many projects, it's kind of critical to define the scope of the project with assistance or a review with the HPC. So we do this in order to keep the application process as standardized as possible. So I appreciate your time this evening to review this project.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is reviewing a memorandum of agreement for 38 Laurel Street. And I pulled that up. Does staff have anything you want to say about that document?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So we do have a member of the applicant team that is here. If you want to speak with them. They have so they came to the table after they got the demolition delay on what had been the property, and the result of that work together is what you see in front of you now. This design is very different than what had initially been approved as a by right project by the Inspectional Services Department before the demolition happened. I am actually much more satisfied with this design from a neighborhood context standpoint and general treatment, given the building components that are added to it, which tend to be much more ubiquitous as to what you see in Somerville. So the applicant team was actually very good about coming to the table, coming back and forth. We've done I've had my colleagues in ISD do a zoning review on it. So if there is anything after a full zoning review is done, once a building permit is applied for, it allows for preservation planning staff to discuss minor adjustments that might need to be made in order to accommodate any of the zoning dimensions. And anything that staff does not consider as minor would have to come back to the commission. So thus far, I'm satisfied with the way the replacement building has come out. Unfortunately, this is one of the situations whereby you don't see signage as part of a memorandum of agreement. This is one of those, I'm not sure that I would have interpretive signage myself for something like this. So that is why you see photos, architectural drawings, and the plan set in front of you.
Okay. Yes, thanks. And I'm remembering now, this is the place that got demolished. There was nothing left when I was expecting it. Yeah.
Correct. And so this was also trying to get to the point of getting a plan for a rebuild of the property between, like, yes, there needed to be some sort of essentially compensation to the city, right? Because the city is having rights in this process. So, you know, this is the outgrowth of that, is getting this design in place, but at the same time, not wanting that parcel to remain empty for 18 months. So this was that negotiated outcome.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to reference pretty strongly the massing of the old building, with some changes, of course, the shed dormers and stuff. Anybody on the commission want to weigh in on this?
I think, like you said, Chair Parks, I mean, the proposed design does seem to call back pretty well to the original massing. It looks like possibly it's a little further forward on the site than the original, but that's...
Interestingly, it's not.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it was oh, it's, you know what it is the rendering of the views is a little
right
cut off. Oh, okay, yes. When I scroll back to the site plan, no, it's back where the original was. Yeah, I mean, I think in my eyes, they seem to have done a pretty good job of you know, echoing what had been there well enough that it fits into the context of the neighborhood. I mean, I know the street, I remember the original house, and this looks to me like it'll fit in. I applaud the negotiators on both sides that are coming to a design that seems to fit in pretty well from what I can see.
And Mr. Chairman, I would note again that if you did want to hear from the applicant team, their attorney is here, and if not, then it's up to you.
Yeah, since they made it, they dialed in. Anything you want to add, applicant team?
Sure thing. Let me just unmute them. Attorney Vigorito, you're unmuted. If you could mute yourself, go right ahead.
Good evening, Chairman Parks, members of the Historical Commission, Attorney Ann Vigorito from Somerville, Massachusetts. You know, we worked heavily with Ms. White and the historical preservation staff to, you know, come up with something that, you know, was going to be pleasing. I just wanted to add in, I think if you remember the history of this, there was a stop work order, and a portion of that home, you know, stayed up for a long time. And, you know, many of the neighbors at the meetings had testified how unsightly it was, and, you know, it is now completely gone, and they're excited to move forward with this, you know, proposal. And as I said, you know, Tanya Carrier from Calsa Design is our architect. She worked very closely with staff, and, you know, we're very happy with this, and we're very pleased, and we, you know, hoping that, you know, you'll feel the same and approve it this evening so that the applicant can move forward. The architect is here as well in case you have any questions for her or questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't really have any particular questions for the architect. I don't know. I mean, the renderings seem to show what's going on. Unless somebody else has any questions.
No, I'll just echo what you and Mr. Shagnon have shared, that the design does a very good job of echoing the original, massing and some of the design cues. So I think it's a good solution.
Thanks. Anybody else? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Somebody puts a motion forward.
I move that we vote to, are we approving or, yeah, approving the memorandum of agreement as presented for 38 Laurel Street.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, motion by Vice Chair Kelly, seconded by Mr. Falvey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, let's see, Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. Thank you all. Okay, the next, in fact, the first public hearing we've had tonight is HPC ALT 2023.44. Address is 137 Central Street. Applicant is Ted Dow, owner is Nathan Cormier. The applicant is seeking a certificate of appropriateness for window replacement done without a permit. And before we go forward, I think I was going to ask staff to give a quick rundown of this before we proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I know that the property owner is here. I don't know if the contractor is here, but I wanted to state that this is a situation that the contractor, the contractor performed the work, obviously without getting permission from the Historic Preservation Commission, and there were no building permits pulled either. So this is definitely not a situation whereby, we have a homeowner pulling a building permit and just doing something. No permits were pulled. So I think that in many ways, this has kind of left the property owner in a rock and a hard place. That's staff's opinion, but that doesn't necessarily change how you have to rule on this, whichever way you determine is the best way to rule on it. But this is to be clear, this is a type of situation that we don't like to see ourselves in. But I work very, very closely with my colleagues in ISD. So I'm really hoping that anybody who is in the audience here, who is a contractor or homeowner or what have you, really does not, find themselves in a situation like this. It's really unfortunate. I am going to, I see somebody's hand is raised. If you're a member of the applicant team, we will unmute you. But I am first going to unmute Nathan Cormier, who's the property owner. And Nathan, if you could please unmute yourself and let us know if you will be presenting or if you have somebody else from your team who will be presenting.
All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Anyways, sorry to meet you guys this way. It's not where I want to be sitting.
It's not you.
Yeah. So as far as I know, they were going to be presenting tonight. They've been handling all this and just keeping intermittent communication with me. This has been going on since February now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not particularly prepared to
Oh, that's fine. No, you don't
Yeah.
have to. Could you let us know who should be speaking?
it should be a representative from Power Windows.
And do you know who that person's name is?
No, I've worked with a couple project managers now, because the original one had told me that I had permits pulled and everything was ready to go. And then my uncle, who's a GC, went looking and found out that it hadn't been pulled.
Right.
So I had to halt the job, etc. And I got passed around a bit, and I actually haven't been contacted by them directly in a couple months. So
I see.
I kind of just thought they would be here.
Okay, so we do have somebody named Christopher DeCecca. Christopher, I apologize if I've mispronounced your last name.
Sorry, I have talked to Chris actually.
Okay,
He was
good.
I just couldn't remember the name. So thank you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So, so Chris, I'm gonna unmute you. And if you could just unmute yourself. And are you there? Chris?
I think I was unmuted.
Chris DeCecca?
This is Alex Reese. I think I just had the option to unmute.
I'm so sorry. You know what this is? See, thank you so much. I'm gonna, can you go ahead and mute yourself?
No, I am
Wait.
Forgive me, I am the party that should be speaking.
You are the party who should be speaking. Okay,
Yes.
great. You're just logged in under a different name. I thought, oh God, this new platform, don't tell me I unmuted the wrong person. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, forgive me. Chris and I are here. I might have just used his login information, so I apologize.
No problem.
For that way.
No problem. So could you please briefly discuss the proposal and the issues with the commission, please?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'd like to speak on with what Miss White was saying. You know, certainly unfortunate. I do work for Power Home Remodeling. We do, thousands of installs within Mass, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. Certainly not what the expectation is for us. We've done hundreds of installs in Somerville. With that being said, this is for a window replacement. We did 18 units. There is a sliding glass door. We have not done the sliding glass door yet, but this is in regards to replacing the windows on the house. We have done the install with the 18 units for the windows, but not the sliding glass door yet. Forgive me, any other required information?
Well, we have some background presented in the staff report, but is there any, the windows you've installed are vinyl windows, is that correct?
Yep, they are vinyl windows. It's a Pella product. We did match the grid patterns that were existing, and they are black windows, which were existing as well.
No, they're not.
They're not.
They're not.
They're white.
They are black on the exterior, white on the interior.
No.
Forgive me. One second.
And Mr. Chair, if I could through you, these are also not grids that are applied to the window. The grid appears to be between the panes of glass.
Yeah,
correct.
The previous windows were True Divide. These are not. And could you address the matter of the lack of permit, which would have triggered a review with historic that would have let you know that the windows that you installed were incorrect?
Yes, give me 1 second. I just want to check something, because I believe we did apply, but I think we got a message about it being historic. But forgive me, I could be mistaken there.
Madam Vice Chair, I could fill you in, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
sure, yeah.
Through you, I think, Alex, you applied for a building permit eventually, but applying for a building permit is different from applying for a historic permit. And so it was through that building permit that that whoever the applicant was told that you needed to go to historic, but then did not go to historic until, things sort of snowballed from there.
Yep, understood. Definitely a mistake on our end. And, obviously if there's fines associated or something like that, it's not something we're, trying to walk away from, but we understand there's repercussions to that.
Okay.
So you'll replace the windows with appropriate windows for the homeowner?
Yeah, we're here to represent, obviously the homeowner and do what's best for the city and the homeowner. So if that is a possibility, we'd be happy to do that. Do you have forgive me with the background noise, I got my daughter running around, but do you have like an ideal manufacturer or vendors or information on that?
Yes, staff will be able to provide you with information on approved windows that would be more appropriate.
Okay. And do we happen to know like lead times on those? I know, we work with Pellis,
Oh,
usually
no.
get them in like 2 to 3 weeks.
No
I don't know.
idea. No
Okay.
idea. But if, however, I believe, I don't believe I'm speaking incorrectly here, but I believe there have been other Pellas that have been approved by the commission in this set of row houses.
And
Okay.
weren't there, not to interrupt, but in the 2003, was it, the previous review of this project, there was an alternate window proposed that we accepted, didn't we? Let me go back and dig that out. That in 2003, when the previous owners applied Marvin Wood Tillpack windows.
I don't know that we want to hitch our wagon to 20-year-old
Yeah, I would.
information.
I'm just looking that over and I'm getting up to speed more. Yeah, we have standards of staff, as Vice Chair Kelly said, there are, in cases where windows are allowed to be replaced. Obviously, Muntins need to be simulated divided lights, and it goes on from there. But I would contact staff about what we approve for replacement windows when they are approved.
Okay. And then I appreciate you sharing that. We're certainly willing to correct this mistake to get this solidified. I know, is vinyl just not allowed at all? Because I know like in those same units, there are some vinyl replacement windows. I don't know if, they possibly didn't pull permits, and across the street, there's vinyl windows and things like that. We have photos that reflect that, but is it just like a no vinyl, or is there like an appeal process, or?
Vinyl is, the guidelines don't allow vinyl, and I don't know the backstory here, but often in Somerville, the historic districts came relatively late in the progression of things, and often we often find replacements and things like that happened before place was in a district, and those become grandfathered for those particular units. Because we can't.
Okay.
We can't require people to undo existing work that was there before they were in a district.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying.
And if I could add on to that too, Mr. Chair, through you, the properties across the street from you are also not historic district properties. So a lot of times people look around the city and they say, well, this house has it, but they're not districted properties. So that will be another difference, because this whole street is not a district, but this set of row houses is a district.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
And then contacting staff, do we have a preferred method there? If you wouldn't mind sharing that.
That you could do historic at somervillema.gov. And we'll be happy to have staff get back in touch with you. But what I would like to say too, Mr. Chair, thank you for letting me speak first and to hear from the homeowner, but this is a public hearing, so if anybody does
All right.
have any comments, they could raise their hand.
Good. Thanks for the reminder. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak about this case?
And if you do, please use the raise your hand function, and I will ever so slowly get around to unmuting you. And I don't see anybody with their hand up. So you may close the public comment portion of the hearing.
Close the public comment portion of the hearing.
Mr. Cormier has his hand up, but he is the owner, so he can, if you allow him to speak, could also speak as well.
Sure.
All right, one second. If you could, are you unmuted, Nathan?
I think so.
You are. You're all
okay,
set. Okay.
Anyways, thank you. I just one thing, just to Vice Chair Kelly's comment earlier about maybe not hitching our wagons to 20-year-old windows. Once you guys do make a decision or something, I just wanted to say the reason I was trying to replace these is because there was extensive water damage and sill rot on the entire backside of the house. So I don't know if that has any bearing here, but that was the purpose here. So I'm trying to shore this house up to maintain it,
Mr. Mr. Chairman, if I could through you, yes, Nathan, no, I think that we all understand that. I think, what Vice Chair Kelly was saying was that, since a replacement window had been approved about 20 years ago on this house, we wouldn't want to recommend that same sort of model and style of replacement window now, because it might not exist anymore, right?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So that's why we wouldn't want to recommend something that no longer exists. That wouldn't put you in a good stead. But we do have windows that have been approved on other units in that row house, and so staff is happy to provide that information to you and to your contractor. And Alex or Chris, whichever one of you gets in touch with Historic I would ask that you please CC Nathan on all the communications that we have, and our staff will be sure to do the same, just to make sure that everybody's in the loop.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
I'll just reminder, that was a good point. We have on a few occasions had window replacements in buildings that are groups of resident, like in this case, row houses or apartment buildings. And I think that we often defer pretty heavily to the consistency. And if there is one, with the exception of that one vinyl window unit in this section of row houses, if there's one particular type of replacement window that's been used predominantly, that matters a lot. So I would also consult, see what's there, so we don't end up having slightly different sight lines from unit to unit, assuming it's meets the general conditions with simulated divided lights and such. So, okay.
I think unless anyone has further questions or thoughts, that I move that we vote to require the replacement of the windows with staff approved models to be worked out with the homeowner and the contractor.
May I make may I suggest an amendment?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, through you, I would recommend that you deny the windows that have been installed and approve a staff approved replacement window that has been used in other row houses, in other units in this same row house, and approved by the commission.
That works.
So moved.
I will second. I guess, are we dealing with both of those at once, or are they separate motions?
I think we're replacing Robin's or Vice Chair Kelly's original motion with the updated one.
Yeah.
Proposed
Okay.
by staff.
But it would be all one motion as opposed to having to move separately on the denying the certificate. Okay, then I will second the motion, since it seems to be a valid motion.
All right, all in favor of the motion proposed by Vice Chair Kelly?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And do with the roll call, Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coghlan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Thank you, folks. So your next step is to go visit staff and come up with a solution there.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
for your time tonight, folks. I
all
appreciate
for
it.
coming.
Thank you.
Have,
And-
one,
Thank you.
And
one
if you
final
could,
question.
oh, sure, if you could all email staff like tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, that would be terrific.
Okay. Yeah, I have no issue with that. I just want to be clear about like a timeline and everything. Obviously, it's susceptible to like when we can get the windows. Is there flexibility there? Does this have to be done within a certain time frame? Obviously, I can get a crew out there, the day after we get the windows, but I just wanted to confirm that with you folks.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I mean, typically, certificates that are issued, the work must be started within a year of issuance. It's not typical that the commission puts a time frame on a start. I wouldn't know how to necessarily, Mr. Chairman, recommend anything like that, given we don't know what lead times look like in this industry.
Yeah, I've never, in any meeting I've been with us, assigned a time frame.
Right.
But knowing that there is one is good, at least, because sometimes things just kind of languish for all eternity. So within a year, I would hope that you wrap it up before that. But that's what our rules are then, Ms. White?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And after that period, then what, does it become a violation through ISD or something?
No, technically no, because people can certainly choose not to do a project.
Well, except this
This is a little different.
that they didn't apply for a permit, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right, you will have to go and apply for your building permit and receive your building permit. And in order to receive your building permit, you will have to upload this certificate from the commission. So what I mean, look, ultimately, if there's any issue with the contractor and the property owner, like getting the contractor to do it versus not, you know, any of that stuff, with that we can't help. But what I can do is I can certainly put an alert on the building permit and an alert on the historic preservation permit and inform all of my colleagues at ISD that this needs to be done. So.
Mhm.
Okay. I know that the imagine the homeowner would like some measure of confidence that the resolution is going to happen. It sounds like the intent is to do that fairly quickly from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And to their credit, you know, this has been ongoing for a while, but they have been communicative with me once we've had updates. It's just
Okay.
been languishing for a bit. So I'm hopeful.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
And thank you, Mr. Cormier, for being persistent and continuing to take care of the building. It's
Yeah.
your efforts are appreciated.
And I love it here.
Yeah. It's a very nice little set of row houses there.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's everything for that case. And the only other thing we have is a public hearing, which appears to not actually be something. Let me read this. Okay, well, just open it up. It's HPC 23-000025. Address is 101 Highland Ave. Did I get that?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, but I think that there's a note underneath that they have requested a continuance.
Oh yeah, so I was not the designation is the 40 is 25. I don't remember reading that kind of format off.
Yes,
23.
I can explain that. We no longer accept applications manually through email, thank God. Or on paper. They all go through CitizenServe now. And so CitizenServe has its own numbering sequence. And so that is now the numbering sequence that we've had to switch to.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair enough.
And so with regard to 101 Highland Ave, we don't need to actually open that up since they've requested a continuance. Since they are continued to the next meeting automatically, they are conceding historic significance, which is allowed under the demolition review ordinance, and they will be proceeding directly to a determination of preferably preserved at the October 17th meeting.
We'd have to vote to allow the withdrawal then.
Have they requested to withdraw?
I mean, do we have to vote? I see the applicant seeks to request a withdrawal. Do we need to vote on that?
Then yes, you would need to vote on the withdrawals, correct?
Okay. Well, is there a motion to grant the withdrawal to the applicant?
I will move that we accept the applicant's concession of the project as historically significant and their request to withdraw the determination of significance and move on to preferably preserved at the next meeting.
Okay. Do we have a second? I'll second it. I think I can do that. Okay, all in favor of the aforementioned motion by Vice Chair Kelly, say aye or yes, whatever you prefer.
And it was by Mr. Chagnon.
It's Mr. Chagnon. Ah.
Yeah.
I scooped her.
Well done. Okay, yes, and then we'll do the roll call. Mr. Chagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Coghlan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So this case will then become a determination of preferably preserved status at the next hearing on October 17th. And that is it for regular stuff. And then we have other business, the CPC update. So I am our designated CPC person. And at our most recent hearing, we have we granted, so we have in the world of, so the way this works for people who haven't been around the CPC thing is that once a year, there's a request for people to submit applications for things that can get CPC funding. And that just, it's in the process, that's actually just wrapped up. So we have at this point a list of applications, and everything they're either historic preservation projects, open space, or affordable housing. And outside of that, we have occasionally these things which are off-cycle requests, where some project which has some situation that's so dramatic or catastrophic or pressing that they need to resolve their funding before that cycle happens. And we've had to hear a couple of these. This most recent one, there was a request actually from the Somerville Museum, because they, interestingly, at a few meetings ago, we allowed them to infill some windows on the side of the building with brick, and it worked for them because they weren't prominent windows. They're on the right side that were very minimally visible, and they wanted them closed because they were doing the archival stuff in the basement. It's less weather, but apparently, as part of the conditions for receiving one of the grants that they've received, the Mass Historic Commission has to approve that, and they decided they didn't like that. So they told them to undo the infilling those windows that we had approved, which is costing them a bunch of money. It's rather frustrating, and I think we made the right call anyway, but that's such is life. So they need extra money for that, and then there's some other kind of associated work around there, and some costs that just went up because they were working off of estimates before. So we granted a certain amount of money. I think it was 120,000 or something like that for additional costs of that project. That had to be granted immediately, or else they'd just be stuck. They'd lose their contractor. And there was one other project that had a similar circumstance where the cost just was a lot more, and they weren't going to get a grant. Oh no, not a lot more. It was the housing project in Windsor Street, where they're going to take down the old adjunct building for the church. Some of you might remember we granted a demo permit on that a few years ago. They are, as part of their work with us for the demolition delay, they agreed to salvage the old Egyptian revival entry portico on the side. And so they have come up with kind of a cool way to incorporate that within the building as part of like a piece within. So it's not like they just stuck it on the side of a new contemporary building. It's actually within it, and it's part of a little framed opening that's very publicly visible from two different directions through glass windows. So I think it's kind of a nice solution, and they needed funding for that too, in order to hedge that money to get more funding from other sources. So that sort of thing. The unfortunate thing is it kind of gobbles up some of the money that we would normally be putting in towards projects that applied this year in cycle, but that's just the way things rolled. So that's where things are right now. And then we're going to start reviewing those shortly and deciding which projects are should get funded. Any questions about that? Miss White would know if I missed something there, because you're highly part of that.
All good.
Okay, and then the last thing on our agenda is the minutes, which I believe we've all read. So anybody who actually needs any time to look at them could make Miss White jump through the screen and throttle us. We hadn't, but I'm asking anyway out of courtesy. I read. Oh yes, go for it, Mr. Chagnon.
I was going to say, I did not spot any typos or corrections on my end that I saw.
So for me, from the July minutes regarding 246 Broadway, it notes with conditions, but the conditions aren't outlined. And so if felt like that needs to be updated.
If I could ask, Mr. Chairman, through you, 246 Broadway, was that an alterations case?
That was, let me just find
It's a
it.
demo delay, a demo.
Preferably preserved, I believe.
So yes, and we found it not preferably preserved with conditions. But there are findings, but there are no conditions.
Right. I think because the conditions are standard when it comes to like not preferably preserved with conditions, it's like photos, architectural drawings, things
Okay.
like that usually.
Well, so, okay,
Aren't those-
on other ones we had specified.
You might have specified other ones. Okay. I
No.
will ask if our minute taker could go back and listen to that portion of the that meeting and see what those conditions were.
And then also from July, under other business, the CPC update, it says there was no update at this time as the chair was not present. It might be more clear to indicate as the, rather than saying the chair was not present, saying the CPC rep, Chair Parks, was not present.
Yes, correct.
makes
I
sense.
will ask that get updated as well.
Okay.
Were there any other items from July that anyone had?
I didn't have any. It took me a moment to remember that we are using a format where we vote yes or no, we always vote two, even on the way the minutes are phrased here. The commission voted 0 to 4 to find something, but that makes sense now.
I
think
guess,
the minutes are,
I guess in that context, then under 25 Warwick Street, that one lists a vote 4 and 0 to find the structure not preferably preserved. Which I suppose we should double check the record as to whether that one was actually phrased as a motion to find it not preferably preserved, which
To
would
not
be,
find it preferably preserved is the way it should be written, because you determined that it was not preferably preserved, but I think the way it should be written in the minutes is that the motion. Sorry, say that again.
oh, you know what it was? I remember this one actually. We structured the vote as finding it not preferably preserved subject to conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Because there wasn't a
Okay.
way to find it to vote for preferably preserved, have it come up 0 and 4 and attach conditions when we talked it through. So I think that was why it was 4 and 0 to find it not preferably preserved subject to conditions and how we structured that motion. I remember that now vaguely because we had some discussion back and forth, which actually makes me wonder whether the 246 Broadway that Vice Chair Kelly brought up simply didn't have conditions attached, which is a possibility, and that the results should simply say not preferably preserved. But I think if we look, if the minute taker looks back at the recording, that'll get clarified, whether it's a typo or whether there are conditions missing.
Okay, very good.
So we probably ought to table that one until next meeting for approving. Is that the right way to go on that? And get the typo corrected?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, I think that makes sense because you want to make sure that your actual determination is correctly captured.
yeah, that's as long as we can do that.
Mhm.
I know these are supposed to get posted by a certain time.
Well, you've certainly reviewed that. I mean, they ideally should be approved, but if there's something
yeah,
that's
well,
not right, I mean, I think that this is one where I would not say to approve pending corrections, because you're actually not sure that what you determined is correctly represented. So I think that that's completely fine.
yeah, and as I just bounced back and forth between 246 Broadway and 25 Warwick Street. 25 Warwick, we voted 4 to 0 to find not preferably preserved. Broadway, we voted the same way, but phrased 0 to 4 to find it preferably preserved.
Right.
So it's kind of like two ways of saying the same thing.
That's two ways of saying the same thing, but like the motions need to be consistent.
Yeah.
The motion, the result is the same for both, but the motions need to be made consistently.
Right, and my recollection, Chair Parks, is that that was because of trying to figure out how to attach the conditions onto the not preferably preserved status. That
Okay.
when we discussed with staff at the time, which was the Shekowitz, that was what we settled on for that one. And then for the 246 Broadway, I think we reverted to our usual policy of making the motion in the positive and having it fail.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we'll nudge those minutes to the next meeting. And let's move on to the next ones. which are
August. Nothing jumped out at me on August's minutes.
August 1st, yeah.
Anyone else?
I didn't see anything.
All right.
I move that we vote to accept the August 1st meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey.
Staying, I was absent.
Okay, and I'll vote yes. And we have one more set of minutes, the September 5th minutes. Any comments on that one?
Not I.
All right,
I move that we vote to accept the September 5th meeting minutes as presented.
Second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll do the roll call again. Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
But I wasn't present at this one. So should I abstain? How does that work?
we've been told that you're allowed to vote for it, but
Okay.
sometimes I tend to abstain just because it feels like that's what I ought to do. But I mean, that's,
Okay.
did I just
Abstain.
interpret your thought correctly, Ms. White?
That's Mr. Chairman, through you, that's correct. Our legal department has stated that when you're voting on minutes, you're accepting, you are voting to the fact that essentially like they exist, irrespective of whether or not you were there.
Okay.
Basically voting to put them in the file cabinet regardless of what the content is, essentially.
So then in
Ultimately,
that
there are
case,
recordings, fortunately, so.
yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. I do have to say the minutes, the person who's doing them, they're nice, and I like the format and everything's good about them. So, continue to say meeting minutes is one of the worst things in life to have to do. So,
So true.
thank you to that person.
That is a kudos and a shout out to Kristen Patnod, who is our minute taker recording secretary for now most of our boards. So hallelujah. The
Yes.
angels are singing because staff's not doing it anymore.
Yeah. And that is all we have on the agenda. Unless there's anything else that's popped up. I don't think so.
I move that we vote to adjourn.
All right. Who wants to second that lovely
I'll second that.
proposal? Seconded by Ms. Price. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Coughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
See you all in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patience as we adjust. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Zoom worked out.
Thank goodness.